lot of people have, political conflicts within their families. There's this cliche of the drunk uncle who spouts off at Thanksgiving dinner. But for you guys, that relative doesn't go away. They're out there in the world making choices that, in your view, make the world a worse place.
In a stunning revelation that has sent shockwaves through media circles, Curtis Ingraham, brother of Fox News host Laura Ingraham, has stepped forward to unveil a troubling family history that he claims shaped his sister's controversial public persona. From Nazi sympathies to personal betrayals, the story peels back the layers of one of conservative media's most polarizing figures. A family shaped by darkness. Behind the polished veneer of Laura Ingraham's public persona lies a childhood marked by shadows and struggle. The Ingraham household of her youth stood in stark contrast to the traditional American values she now champions on her primetime Fox show. Within those walls, a troubling atmosphere pervaded, shaped by the dominating presence of their father, whose influence left an indelible mark on both siblings' lives. The family bookshelf told its own disturbing story. Among the volumes that lined their living room stood Hitler's Mein Kampf, a dark testament to their father's ideological leanings. This wasn't merely a historical artifact gathering dust, according to Curtis Ingraham. It represented their father's genuine sympathies towards Nazi ideology. The atmosphere at home was further poisoned by their father's struggles with alcoholism. His battles with the bottle manifested in abusive behavior, casting long shadows over the children's formative years. The combination of his Nazi sympathies and alcoholic tendencies created a volatile mixture that Curtis describes as the familial soil from which his sister's current persona eventually emerged. This upbringing left its mark on both siblings, though in different ways. For Curtis, it fostered a determination to break free from the cycle of intolerance and speak truth to power. For Laura, her brother suggests, it cultivated a hardened worldview and an anger that would later find expression in her confrontational media presence. The painful irony of their situation wasn't lost on Curtis, who noticed that their own grandparents were Polish immigrants, a fact that stood in sharp contrast to their father's extremist views and Laura's later stance on immigration. This complex family history created a web of contradiction that eventually surfaced in their adult lives, particularly as Laura rose to prominence as a conservative media figure. The scars of those early years ran deep, creating fissures that eventually split the siblings apart. While they once found solace in their shared experience of growing up in such a challenging environment, their divergent responses to that shared trauma would ultimately lead them down dramatically different paths. The anger that permeated their childhood home didn't dissipate with time. Instead, according to Curtis, it merely found new forms of expression, particularly in Laura's public persona and political positions. A sibling bond shattered.
Someone asked me, is that really your sister, or is she just playing a media personality? And I think it is who she has become.
Massive demographic changes have been foisted upon the American people. And they're changes that none of us ever voted for, and most of us don't like.
She said that letting immigrants in might change or dilute our national experience, our American way of life. And I thought, hypocrite.
Time has a way of transforming relationships, but few transformations have been as dramatic as the journey from intimacy to enmity between Laura and Curtis Ingraham. Their early adult years were marked by a closeness that seemed to transcend their difficult childhood. They shared vacations, confidences, and the kind of sibling bond that suggested they had emerged from their troubled home as unified survivors. The first glimpse of their potential for reconciliation and understanding emerged in 1997 when Laura penned a poignant essay for the Washington Post. In it, she appeared to undergo a profound transformation in her views on homosexuality, inspired by witnessing her brother Curtis's relationship with his partner Richard Smith. The piece seemed to herald a new chapter in their relationship, one where personal experience had triumphed over prejudice. As Curtis and Richard faced the devastating reality of Richard's AIDS diagnosis, Laura appeared to stand with them. Yet this moment of apparent breakthrough would prove fleeting. As Laura's religious convictions deepened in the years that followed, her stance on LGBTQ+ issues began to shift. What had seemed like a genuine evolution in her thinking gradually revealed itself, in Curtis's view, as a temporary accommodation rather than a true change of heart. The sister who had once appeared to embrace understanding began to retreat behind the phrase "agree to disagree" when discussing same-sex marriage with her brother. This reversal cut deeply into their relationship. For Curtis, it wasn't merely a political disagreement, but a personal betrayal. The sister who had once witnessed his love story and defended it publicly now seemed to be using their family narrative for political convenience while simultaneously undermining the very rights and dignity she had once appeared to support. The final fractures in their relationship emerged during the Trump era as Laura's voice grew more prominent in conservative media. What had once been private disagreements spilled out into the public sphere, with Curtis compelled to speak out against what he saw as his sister's hypocrisy. The intimate knowledge that once bound them together, their shared history, their family secrets, their private struggles, became ammunition in a public battle that neither could have anticipated in their closer days, college years and beyond. The seeds of Laura Ingraham's future media persona first took root during her years at Dartmouth College in the early 80s. As editor-in-chief of the Dartmouth Review, she carved out a reputation that would foreshadow her later career, marked by provocative tactics and controversial stances that often pushed the boundaries of journalistic ethics. The prestigious ivy-covered walls of Dartmouth became the testing ground for methods that would later define her approach to media engagement. One incident in particular stood out. Under her leadership, the Dartmouth Review orchestrated a covert operation targeting the campus's Gay Students Association. The decision to secretly record a confidential support group meeting represented more than just an editorial choice. It was a calculated move that would have lasting consequences. Despite knowing the meeting's private nature and the vulnerability of its participants, the paper proceeded to publish the names of those present, shattering the trust and safety these students had sought in their gathering. The fallout from the incident reverberated through the campus community. Faculty advisor Jeffrey Hart's observations of her stance during this period revealed an unwavering commitment to her positions, even in the face of significant backlash. Rather than showing remorse or reconsidering her approach, Ingraham appeared to become more entrenched in her views. The controversy didn't end with graduation, it set a precedent for future confrontations. The tactics employed during these formative years, the strategic use of expose journalism, the willingness to breach private spaces for public impact, and the steadfast defense of controversial positions became recurring themes throughout her career. The modern monster.
Paul Gosar is my brother. And I endorse Dr. Brill.
Wholeheartedly endorse Dr. David Brill for Congress.
Curtis Ingraham is the brother of Laura Ingraham, the easily parodied Fox News host.
Good evening, I'm Laura Ingraham.
We brought them together to find out what it's like when politics actually tears your family apart.
The transformation of Laura Ingraham from a sister Curtis once knew into what he sees as a media monster stands as one of the most painful narratives in contemporary political media. Through Curtis's lens, the evolution wasn't sudden, but rather a gradual metamorphosis, accelerated by the intoxicating combination of power, influence, and an estimated $15 million annual salary from Fox News. The weight of their shared history makes Curtis's public denouncement of his sister all the more devastating. His perspective comes not from a place of political disagreement alone, but from intimate knowledge of their family's dark legacy. The shadows of their father's influence, his Nazi sympathies, and alcoholic abuse seem to Curtis to have found new expression in Laura's public persona, transformed into a different kind of destructive force reaching millions of viewers nightly. Perhaps most painful for Curtis is watching his sister's influence on American culture mirror what he considers to be their father's worst traits. The ability to sow division, to promote intolerance, and to amplify fear has been transformed from a personal family trauma into a national phenomenon. Now it's time to hear from you. In an era of deep political division, what does it mean when our closest family members become our most vocal critics? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below.